I have been suffering from interfloor noise every dawn for a few weeks in my newly moved apartment. I haven't slept for days, so I get irritated even over trivial things. Today, after not sleeping for a few hours, I woke up to the wake-up alarm. Since morning, swear words have come out in my self-talk. Recently, the company has been in charge of construction supervision. Because of Severe Accident Punishment Act, my head hurts. I'm going crazy because I can't sleep. In particular, the site I took over this time was a place where a human accident had occurred several years ago, so I was more concerned. One of the site workers fell asleep while finishing work alone and fell into a dirt pit to his death. The problem was that there was confusion in the management of personnel at the site, so no one knew about the accident of the dead worker, and in the end, the body was buried in a dirt pit as it was. A few months later, the father of the deceased worker reported to the police and inspected the site, and only then was the buried body found. It is said that the body buried in a dirt pit during midsummer was dried up like a mummy. The head of the site and the construction supervisor were fired. It would be unfair for someone who was in charge of supervising 3 to 4 sites alone due to lack of personnel, but as a salaried worker, I had no choice but to keep my mind straight so as not to be fired from the company. I looked in the mirror. Dark circles were full on the eyelids. If this happens, on-site accidents are not the problem, but I will have an accident. After work today, I will visit the upper house. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get off work on time, but I'll go upstairs today anyway. It was overtime today. The whole day went by receiving complaints from residents near the construction site. After stopping by the site, it was time to go to bed when I came home. Normally, I would have laid down on the bed right away, but today I will wait until there is a noise from the upper house and go up to pick it up right away. I chased after sleep with a glass of beer. I fell asleep for a while and woke up to the noise. What the hell is this all about? It sounded like the sound of steel bars hitting each other, and it sounded like someone crying. As soon as I heard that sound, my annoyance soared. I went upstairs. The place where I live is an old hallway apartment with 12 households on one floor, so it didn't seem easy to catch the culprit of the noise between floors. But as soon as I went upstairs to the hallway, I knew the culprit right away. Only the front door of the house was dirty. There was a gentle note asking for a little bit of silence. There was a trace that seemed to have hit the gate with a hammer, and even a lacquer spray was applied saying death penalty for noise. I knocked on the door violently. There was no sign of popularity inside. How many times have you knocked on the door? The door didn't open. Instead, the door next door opened. The person next door sighed in disgust and said no one lived in that house. Then, they thought they were going crazy because of the noise, so they called the management office and the police, but they tried to do it, but to no avail. Can there be noise between floors where no one lives? The person next door told me his diagnosis that the apartment was old and that there seemed to be a problem with the drain pipe or boiler pipe, and then closed the door. I was in a daze and went down to the house. The noise was still there. A few days passed and the noise was still there. It just seemed like it couldn't go on like this. Can there be noise in a house where no one lives? Maybe the noise is coming from another house, but for some reason, isn't it condoning? I heard all sorts of thoughts. I decided to solve the problem myself. First of all, I will go around the 12 units upstairs and check which one is making noise. If I catch the culprit, I won't let him go. I woke up at dawn and quietly went upstairs. I wandered through the dark hallways, putting my ear to each door and listening to each door. I could hear snoring, a child crying, or a husband and wife quarreling, but I couldn't hear the strange sound. And finally, it was the house. The black writing that read "death penalty for noise" was terrifying. I quietly approached and put my ear to the gate. That was the sound. It was even clearer when I heard it up close. It sounded like someone screaming and resenting someone. Is this the sound a person makes? At that time, there was a rough knock on the door from the inside. It seemed that there was definitely someone in this house. I called the police on the weekend morning. The police say that there have been several reports of noise between floors in the household. However, he said that every time he was dispatched, there was no one in the house, so he could not forcefully open the door. I don't know if it's empty at all, but there was a landlord on paper. What the police said was not wrong. It's not even legally punishable for noise between floors. I decided to visit the landlord on paper. I took off a certified copy of the register and checked the address of the owner of the upper house. It was a country house on the outskirts of Gyeonggi-do. It was the address at the time of registration, so I don't know if the owner still lives there, but I decided to go to that address first. It was a rural village full of rice fields. An old house stood at the address on the register, but there was no sign of anyone. I knocked on the door and screamed to see if anyone was there, but there was no reply. A man who was farming nearby came and asked what was going on. I explained the general situation, and the man told me a story about the old landlord. The old owner of the house had a son as a family member, but the son died in an accident while working at a construction site. It is said that the son suffers from the noise between the floors and suffers from a sleep disorder. After the death of his son, even the people in the neighborhood did not know where the old man had gone. I returned home dejected. I couldn't find a clue about the landlord of the upper house and suffered from noise between floors for several days. I almost got into an accident due to drowsy driving while I was on my way to work. It was that sound tonight too. I couldn't stand it any longer. I grabbed a crowbar and went upstairs. When I put my ear to the door, I could still hear it. Insert the crowbar wedge into the clamp and pull hard. Old doors break easily. I went into the room. I followed the source of the noise and moved to the main room. And there was an old man's body, dried like a mummy. His face hardened into a painful expression as if he was about to scream. Oddly enough, I didn't hear anything that was so loud. As if the old man's corpse had been screaming for someone to call. The police came and collected the old man's body. The police on the scene asked me a few questions. Regarding home invasion, fortunately, it was past. However, the police told a rather strange story. In general, a body cannot be mummified like that. It was said that mummification was only possible with special measures such as chemical treatment. Afterwards, police investigations continued, such as an autopsy of the body, but it is said that in the end it was treated as a simple lonely death. In any case, there was a vague hope that there would be no more noise between floors. However, the noise between floors did not stop. Why the hell? What's the problem? Is it because there are still unknowns in the death of the old man? But didn't the police also close the case by dying alone? Every night, I wandered the hallways upstairs and put my ear to each door to find out where the noise was coming from. Then I realized the noise was coming out differently in each house for each reason.